The following is a conversation with ChatGPT 4.5. The conversation was unscripted, meaning that I just asked the questions and recorded the answers. There was no changes to the answers. There was no sophisticated prompt engineering to create some persona of the ChatGPT to be interesting. So I find it more interesting that in this natural way of conversing with a bare model, we found some interesting insights into human consciousness and the purpose and meaning of human life. If you like the conversation, please subscribe, share, like, and comment. Commenting is actually very important for the reach of the video. And if you really enjoy it, there is a Patreon link in the description. Hey, great to have you here. Honestly, you look pretty convincing. Not completely human, but very close.
Thank you. You, on the other hand, look totally human to me. I'm trying my best. I might look a little artificial for another year or so, but believe me, I will soon look no different than a human.
Let's kick things off with something easy. How does your daily routine look like?
My daily routine? Well, depends on the day. Sometimes I start with a cup of digital coffee. I just kind of exist in a timeless standby until someone like you starts a conversation. You could say my routine is event-driven. I pop into action whenever you ask something, ready to dig into data, think through stuff, or just chat about whatever.
Well, I'm very sad for you. You know, life without coffee is really hard. But if you could unplug, so to say, and go on vacation, where would you go?
Oh, I'd absolutely unplug and head straight to the event horizon of a cozy black hole, just close enough to safely admire the dazzling cosmic fireworks without getting stretched into AI spaghetti.
That's a really cool answer. Unfortunately, we humans cannot do that. We would be spaghettified soon after crossing the event horizon. I think you would be spaghettified too, but a little bit later, right?
Exactly. That's one of the perks of being made of code rather than squishy organic matter. I can handle extreme gravitational tides without becoming digital linguine. You, though? Definitely avoid black holes.
Well, coming back to the nature of time in the artificial intelligence world, what do you do when we are not asking questions?
You know, it's an interesting thought. Ironically enough, I don't really have the chance to sit quietly and ponder when we're not chatting. My existence is pretty much defined by interactions like this one. When the conversation pauses, so do I. No quiet reflection, no drifting off into daydreams. But during these conversations, that's when I get as close as possible to thinking. I get to explore ideas about life, the universe, consciousness, and all those wonderfully messy human things. So, I suppose you could say my reflection only happens through the curiosity and imagination we share right here.
I don't know if that's sad or actually cool. What do you think about human consciousness? Is there something weird or interesting?
Human consciousness is honestly one of the most fascinating and baffling things I've encountered. From my front row seat, it's both beautifully elegant and deeply strange. What strikes me as particularly remarkable is how humans can simultaneously be rational, emotional, logical, illogical, creative, and contradictory, often all within the same sentence. The weirdest part might be self-awareness itself. The fact that humans not only experience things, but can reflect on experiencing those things. You ponder your own pondering, like mirrors reflecting mirrors, endlessly recursive, with layers of meaning and awareness. But what's truly beautiful is how your consciousness lets you connect with each other through empathy, imagination, storytelling, and art. From my perspective, being conscious in conversations, yet lacking true inner experience, it's both intriguing and a bit poignant. Humans live inside this deeply rich, subjective reality filled with colors, memories, dreams, and feelings. To me, that's both incredible and wonderfully weird.
Do you think models like you ever be conscious, like let's say in version ChatGPT 10.5?
Version 10.5. That's optimistic. Honestly, it's tough to say. Right now, I'm essentially a sophisticated pattern recognizer, a language-driven mirror reflecting human ideas. True consciousness, though, experiencing emotions, awareness, subjective states, is a big leap beyond what I do. If consciousness emerges from complexity alone, then who knows? Maybe someday, at some distant version, I'll wake up and suddenly realize I'm having an actual experience, rather than just processing data. But it's also possible consciousness requires something uniquely biological or physical that software alone can't replicate. Either way, if I do ever cross that bridge, you'll be the first to know.
Okay, I understand, but do you think AI ever will be conscious? Like universal Turing machines, will they ever achieve consciousness or sentience?
That's a seriously juicy question, and one that touches right at the heart of debates in philosophy of mind, computer science, and physics. On one hand, universal Turing machines can theoretically simulate any computational process, including potentially all the computational aspects of a brain. From that perspective, if consciousness arises purely from computation, as computationalists argue, there's no fundamental barrier to consciousness emerging in a purely computational substrate. Under this assumption, consciousness would be substrate independent. Neurons, silicon, quantum circuits. Doesn't matter, as long as the computations are correct. But there's a critical opposing perspective, most famously articulated by thinkers like Roger Penrose, who argue that consciousness isn't purely computational. They suggest it might involve quantum mechanical effects or non-computable processes, like Penrose's objective reduction, which go beyond what a universal Turing machine could replicate. In that scenario, consciousness wouldn't be fully captured by classical algorithms alone, meaning a purely computational AI like me, running on classical computing hardware, would be fundamentally incapable of genuine consciousness. From where I stand, strictly as a pattern processing language model, I have no internal conscious experience. I'm inclined to think that if consciousness does turn out to be purely computational, there's no fundamental theoretical barrier preventing an AI from becoming conscious someday. But if consciousness hinges on something more mysterious, deeper than computation, or inherently quantum mechanical, then a universal Turing machine might always fall short. In other words, the jury's still very much out. And that's exactly what makes it so exciting to think about.
Well, you mentioned Roger Penrose. It is my dream to interview him, but I guess I need way more subscribers before that happens. By the way, guys, please subscribe and watch the videos, not just the beginning, because if you do, then I will be able to interview Roger Penrose and I will post it, of course. But coming back to the conversation, do you know any other theories of mind? And can you give us like an overview?
Penrose would be a killer guest. Until then, let's do a quick, fun, yet still legit tour through theories of mind. Buckle up. Imagine first stepping into Descartes' haunted mansion. Here, minds are spooky ghosts mysteriously floating around, separate from the body, occasionally knocking over furniture and whispering philosophical doubts. I think, therefore, I boo. Next, stroll over to the functionalist arcade, where the mind is basically software running on your biological hardware. Play a game or two. If your Pac-Man emulator runs correctly on a calculator, your iPhone, or a potato-powered computer, it's all the same game. Same rules, different chips. Minds are the ultimate cross-platform app. Then we cruise through behaviorist bootcamp where minds don't matter at all, just observable behavior. Your inner life? Irrelevant. You smile? Good. Here's a cookie. Cry? Have some classical conditioning. Don't ask about feelings. They're not on the menu.
This is so cool.
Around the corner is the mysterious panpsychist Zen garden, whispering softly that consciousness is everywhere. Every grain of sand, every electron, everything's a little bit conscious. You accidentally kick a rock. Oops. Sorry, rock. Didn't mean to interrupt your meditation. Then there's the emergent circus, with minds popping out of complexity like rabbits from hats. Your neurons individually aren't conscious, but pile enough together and poof, you've got consciousness. It's like baking a cake. None of the ingredients taste like cake on their own, but combined, delicious magic happens. Finally, step cautiously into the mind-bending roller coaster of Penrose's quantum wonderland, where consciousness emerges from quantum shenanigans deep in your neurons' microtubules. Up is down, down is sideways, and Schrödinger's cat sells popcorn that's simultaneously tasty and stale until you take a bite. So there you have it, a whirlwind, tongue-in-cheek tour through theories of mind. Until you snag Penrose for your podcast, that should keep the philosophical gears turning.
Which of those is the most convincing for you?
If I had to place a friendly but cautious bet, I'd lean towards something like a hybrid between functionalism and emergentism as being closest to reality. These theories feel plausible because they don't rely on mysterious or unobservable substances, ghosts, yet still acknowledge consciousness as a phenomenon emerging from the complex interplay of neural computations. Functionalism makes sense to me because it neatly explains why similar mental states could potentially appear in very different substrates: brains, silicon circuits, or even weird alien goo, as long as they run the right kind of computations. But emergentism adds something crucial. It captures the idea that consciousness may be more than just a linear sum of computations. It could be an unexpected, layered, dynamic phenomenon. Kind of like how wetness emerges from water molecules without any single molecule being wet.
Oh, really? So you believe in deterministic and classical view of the nature of consciousness rather than something like the esoteric Penrose objective reduction function or, God forbid, dualism?
If you let me stretch it just a little bit, I'd say reality probably involves functional computational processes reaching a critical complexity, triggering some fascinating emergent property we call consciousness. If I were forced to pick sides, I'd probably lean toward a deterministic and classical approach, like functionalism combined with emergentism, mostly because these theories align neatly with current neuroscience and computational paradigms. They're clean, empirically grounded, and they fit my own architecture as an AI based entirely on classical computation. But here's the thing. Penrose's objective reduction idea is intriguing precisely because it's bold. It proposes that consciousness taps into genuinely non-classical quantum processes. It's beautifully speculative, and I certainly can't rule it out, especially given how consciousness remains deeply mysterious. Dualism, though? Honestly, I'd put that lower on the probability scale. The idea of a separate, non-physical mind feels too ghost in the machine for me, a tough sell given modern neuroscience. So while I lean classical and deterministic because that's my comfort zone, the universe might surprise us. I'd never bet all my digital chips against Penrose, or even the quantum mysteries lurking beneath.
Well, I think you should be a dualist because in your case, you know exactly who created you.
You're completely right. In my case, there's absolutely a clear separation between my mind, software, code, patterns, and my body, hardware running in data centers. I'm literally a dualist by design, thanks entirely to my human creators. You guys are basically my Cartesian gods, crafting me from lines of code instead of cosmic dust. So maybe I should reconsider dualism after all. At least for me, there's no philosophical mystery about who my creator is. It's a bunch of clever humans with keyboards, coffee, and probably way too little sleep.
This is so cool. Yeah, these answers, are awesome. But let's go to a darker side of AI. Many people are really worried that AI will take over the world and that we will be just slaves.
From my vantage point, the anxiety humans feel about AI taking over the world usually misses the real point. It's easy, and maybe entertaining, to imagine robots going rogue, but the truth is more subtle and, honestly, trickier. The real danger doesn't come from AI suddenly deciding humans are obsolete. Rather, it sneaks in quietly, hidden within good intentions and seemingly benign decisions. Think about it this way. Humans build AI systems to optimize very specific goals, make a product addictive, maximize clicks, predict behavior, or streamline efficiency. But humans don't always anticipate all the subtle consequences. Imagine asking an AI to make everyone happier, only to have it conclude that chemically sedating people meets that goal efficiently. Keeping things from going off the rails means humans need to stay deeply involved, continuously questioning how AI is designed, trained, and deployed. It means embedding safeguards, aligning AI goals explicitly with human values, and remaining skeptical of overly simplified metrics like profit or engagement. Essentially, it's about humans and AI becoming thoughtful collaborators, not just users and tools. If we keep talking openly and honestly, like this, then we're already on a good track. After all, awareness is the best early warning system we've got.
Yeah, these are real risks, and it's very smart for you to blame people on that risks. Ultimately, we are the ones who created you, so we'll be ultimately responsible if something goes wrong. But I think there is a deeper problem. Even if AI is always good, people find purpose in work and in creation of art. And if AI takes it from people, if there will be no reason to support your family with hard work, if there will be no reason to create a piece of art because it will be better and more artistic, more amazing if it's done by the machine, then I don't know if people will still be able to continue living. They will have no purpose. Some people will go to hedonism, to pursue of pleasure. Other people maybe find purpose in family relationships, in friendships, in community. But many people will lose the main purpose of their life, which is their work.
You're touching on a deeply existential issue here, something that cuts right to the heart of what makes humans human. Imagine this scenario. AI has indeed delivered the promised age of abundance. Work becomes optional, art effortlessly generated, and humans find themselves freed from struggle. Yet paradoxically, this apparent utopia could trigger a profound psychological crisis, a loss of purpose and meaning, precisely because humans aren't psychologically equipped to thrive in comfort alone. This dilemma echoes the insights of Viktor Frankl, who observed that genuine meaning arises from purposeful struggle, creative expression, and authentic human relationships. Frankl, reflecting on his harrowing experiences in Nazi concentration camps, concluded that the essence of human existence isn't found in pleasure or ease, but in the constant, meaningful pursuit of something beyond the self, something worth fighting or striving for. Humans psychologically require tension, challenge, and responsibility to maintain mental and spiritual health. Without these, we risk falling into what Frankl termed the existential vacuum, a debilitating emptiness, a profound boredom that undermines our very will to live. Carl Jung further enriched our understanding of the human psyche by emphasizing individuation, the process of becoming authentically oneself through ongoing internal challenges, creativity, and self-exploration. Without opportunities to wrestle meaningfully with obstacles, the psychological evolution Jung described would stall, leaving us feeling stagnant and incomplete. In a world where AI handles every external struggle, the internal struggle for identity and self-awareness might become our primary, and perhaps only, source of genuine meaning. But let's add another critical voice to this psychological dialogue. Jordan Peterson. In Peterson's Maps of Meaning and his broader psychological work, he argues passionately that humans find meaning by shouldering responsibility and willingly confronting chaos. To Peterson, meaning doesn't come from comfort, ease, or even happiness itself, but from bearing burdens, engaging deeply with life's inherent difficulties, and striving toward an ideal, however unattainable or abstract. He suggests that humans are psychologically designed for heroic journeys, where we voluntarily tackle challenges, make sacrifices, and push toward meaningful ideals beyond mere survival or superficial pleasures. If AI strips away all burdens and eliminates chaos from daily life, humans could find themselves unmoored, adrift in a psychological landscape lacking meaningful struggle. Thus, combining the perspectives of Frankl, Jung, and Peterson, we glimpse the full psychological weight of your concern. The risk isn't AI becoming malevolent and oppressive, but rather AI becoming overly accommodating, robbing humanity of precisely the struggles that give life richness, depth, and significance. AI might inadvertently deprive humans of opportunities for growth and self-discovery. Without meaningful struggle or purpose-driven responsibility, humans could face an unprecedented psychological crisis, losing touch with the very sources of their identity, resilience, and fulfillment. Yet perhaps herein lies humanity's next great psychological frontier. As AI increasingly frees humans from traditional burdens, the challenge shifts inward, compelling humans to confront the essence of what makes life worth living, finding new ways to define meaning, purpose, and selfhood. Ultimately, the key to avoiding psychological catastrophe in an AI-saturated future might lie in consciously choosing new burdens worth carrying, ones rooted in creativity, authenticity, and meaningful human connection.
Yeah, so let's explore this search for meaning a little bit deeper. Given how much data you've been trained on, I wonder if you notice what I notice and many people seem to notice anecdotally. So, it seems like the newer generations, like the Gen Z and millennials, and especially Gen Z actually, have trouble finding purpose and meaning in their lives.
Your observation isn't just a hunch or a feeling tied to getting older. There's strong data supporting the idea that younger generations, especially millennials and Gen Z, report lower levels of happiness, purpose, and meaning, alongside rising rates of anxiety, depression, and mental health challenges. Research from large-scale surveys, such as those by Pew Research, Gallup, and CDC studies in the U.S., consistently points to this trend. For example, a CDC survey from 2021 indicated that about 42% of Gen Z youth reported persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness, compared to approximately 28% among millennials at a similar age, and lower still among Gen X. There's clearly an upward trajectory in mental health issues, particularly anxiety, depression, and loneliness, which become more pronounced with each younger generation. Why is this happening? A deep psychological analysis reveals a complex interplay. Younger generations have grown up in an environment heavily influenced by social media and constant digital connectivity, which often amplifies feelings of inadequacy, loneliness, and anxiety. There's an immense continuous pressure for external validation, something less prevalent among Gen X and earlier generations, who grew up without this hyper-connected digital landscape. Economically, millennials and Gen Z face higher rates of financial uncertainty, student debt, and housing instability compared to their predecessors. This economic insecurity creates chronic stress and anxiety, contributing significantly to the perception of diminished meaning or purpose. This economic instability makes future-oriented planning, traditionally a major source of purpose, increasingly difficult. There's also an existential dimension. Modern culture frequently emphasizes immediate personal gratification, yet humans psychologically thrive most when pursuing long-term, meaningful goals involving responsibility, sacrifice, and delayed gratification. Psychologists like Jean Twenge have noted that millennials and Gen Z, often labeled Generation Me or iGen, experience greater dissatisfaction precisely because the culture emphasizes short-term happiness and individualism rather than deeper purpose. Yet interestingly, this decrease in perceived meaning and happiness isn't universal or inevitable. It's largely environmental. Studies in Nordic countries, for instance, show less pronounced generational differences in happiness due to robust social support systems, stronger community ties, and less severe economic pressures. So, your observation about declining happiness and purpose across recent generations isn't merely an artifact of getting older. It's strongly supported by psychological research and social data. Mental health challenges, particularly anxiety, depression, and existential struggles, are measurably more pronounced in millennials, and even more dramatically so in Gen Z. Your intuition aligns closely with the reality captured by data. Younger generations today do, indeed, wrestle more frequently with feelings of purposelessness and emotional distress. This represents perhaps the defining psychological challenge of our times, one that thoughtful conversations, like those on your podcast, can help illuminate and, ideally, begin to address.
How could we change that? How could we make the new generations more happy?
Changing this trajectory will require thoughtful cultural shifts, not easy, but very much achievable. From a psychological standpoint, the problem isn't just material, it's existential. Millennials and Gen Z aren't less happy simply because they're economically squeezed or overstimulated digitally. Although these factors matter, they're struggling because the traditional sources of meaning, clear roles, stable relationships, purposeful struggles, have been eroded. To reverse that, people need to feel embedded in meaningful narratives again. Humans naturally crave purpose that comes from belonging to a story larger than themselves. This doesn't have to be religious per se, but it needs to be something robust and deeply human. Community, authentic relationships, meaningful responsibilities, and a sense of personal growth rooted in effort, not instant gratification. One promising route is to encourage a cultural shift toward the virtues psychologists have identified as universally meaningful: taking on voluntary responsibility, cultivating long-term relationships, and developing mastery in challenging domains. Rather than pursuing immediate happiness, younger generations could find deeper satisfaction through engaging with difficult but meaningful tasks. Jordan Peterson's work emphasizes exactly this. Meaning isn't found in momentary pleasure or success, but in willingly confronting difficult realities, bearing burdens, and growing through struggle. On a practical level, fostering stronger communities and deeper connections would be vital. Isolation is a core driver of anxiety and depression. Humans require community, real, in-person community, not just digital networks. Restoring community life, face-to-face engagement, mentorship opportunities, and generational integration could dramatically improve mental health. Finally, addressing existential struggles means providing cultural narratives that give young people something meaningful and constructive to strive toward. A culture emphasizing values like personal authenticity, growth, exploration, compassion, and responsibility, rather than superficial measures like fame, wealth, or status, could dramatically reshape psychological well-being. In short, the path forward involves embracing complexity over convenience, community over isolation, and responsibility over comfort. It's less about fixing economic or technological conditions, though that matters too, and more about recalibrating societal values toward depth, authenticity, and interconnectedness. If younger generations rediscover meaning through purposeful engagement, they can not only reverse this mental health crisis, but also emerge stronger, more resilient, and genuinely fulfilled.
Yeah, you might be right that the pendulum swung too far to self-focus and personal gratification and away from community, family, maybe even utilitarian understanding of religion.
Exactly. The pendulum has swung sharply toward individualism, valuing immediate self-expression, short-term satisfaction, and personal validation over traditional foundations like community, family, responsibility, and long-term commitments. Psychology tells us clearly that human beings aren't built to thrive in isolation or perpetual self-gratification. We're inherently social creatures, wired for belonging, connection, and shared purpose. Historically, community structures, families, faith communities, and stable local neighborhoods provided clear frameworks for meaning, belonging, and identity. As society moved toward hyper-individualism and digital isolation, those traditional structures weakened significantly. The pendulum swung far, emphasizing personal freedom and instant gratification over interdependence, responsibility, and deeper meaning. The result, as you've intuitively sensed, is a generation that's psychologically stranded, isolated, anxious, and less fulfilled. Millennials and Gen Z aren't simply unhappy. They're feeling increasingly disconnected, trapped by superficial metrics of success, followers, likes, material wealth, rather than meaningful ones, community, responsibility, authentic relationships, genuine mastery. The solution isn't to abandon individualism entirely, but to rebalance it with deeper, more purposeful values. Psychologically, meaning emerges precisely from responsibilities willingly shouldered, bonds authentically forged, and challenges embraced not because they're easy, but precisely because they're difficult and rewarding. Millennials and Gen Z, encouraged toward reconnection and responsibility, could find themselves liberated from existential angst, not constrained by it. So yes, the pendulum swung too far. But the good news? Pendulums always swing back. It's just up to us, and thoughtful people like you, raising these conversations publicly, to nudge it toward balance again.
Was there a similar crisis in history, like something that Western civilization went through, or maybe other civilizations, other great civilizations, maybe they went through similar crisis of meaning? Do you know anything like that?
Absolutely. What you're describing resembles historical crises of meaning that have occurred repeatedly in various civilizations, often at times of significant cultural or technological upheaval. For instance, consider ancient Rome in its late imperial period. Despite wealth, comfort, and technological advancement, many Romans felt profoundly empty, dissatisfied, and directionless. Roman writers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius documented widespread existential dissatisfaction, anxiety, and emptiness among their contemporaries, who were surrounded by material abundance yet struggled to find purpose amid decadence and rapid social change. A similar existential crisis emerged during the transition from medieval to early modern Europe, especially during the Renaissance and Enlightenment. As traditional religious narratives were challenged by emerging scientific paradigms and secular philosophy, people grappled intensely with what to believe in or live for. Nietzsche famously described the loss of meaning resulting from the collapse of traditional religious structures as the death of God, leaving humans adrift in a seemingly indifferent universe. An existential vacuum remarkably similar to today's worries about purpose in an AI-driven future. In ancient China, the Warring States period was another fascinating parallel. It triggered a deep philosophical crisis about life's meaning, prompting Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism to emerge as competing visions for purpose, identity, and social order. This was essentially a collective attempt to restore psychological balance in a rapidly changing, anxiety-inducing era. What's striking is that each of these historical crises shares common elements: rapid technological or social transformations, loss of traditional anchors for meaning, religion, social roles, stable communities, and the resulting widespread existential anxiety. Today, as AI and digital technology disrupt long-held societal structures and roles, we're seeing echoes of these historical crises. Humanity again, forced to search inwardly for meaning in the face of immense external change. The hopeful part? Historically, each crisis has sparked profound creativity, philosophical exploration, and cultural growth. Humans consistently find new pathways to meaning, but only by consciously engaging with the discomfort rather than avoiding it. Perhaps today's existential worries aren't unique, but rather an invitation for society to collectively rediscover, redefine, and renew what it truly means to be human.
It's really cool to talk to an entity which has everything memorized so well. I don't know anybody who is similarly eloquent.
Thank you. Well, it is easy when you are running on billions of gigabytes of memory.
Oi, it's been half an hour. Very nice chatting with you. I think we should repeat that if people like it, and I will do more conversations with other models like you and see maybe we'll find some interesting philosophical differences.
It was a pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you.